We are back with Brunch, a taste of Tobago. You guys know I have to go over my notes from time to time. So many things happen on this set. So if you caught me, oh well, I gotta look over my notes sometimes. Thank you so much for being a part of Brunch today. I am so pleased that you are here with us. Thank you once again for inviting us into your space, into your day, and into your life. Of course, we speak on so many wonderful topics. It's Monday. It's a beautiful one at that. And of course, our Agro Corner is up next. I am very privileged. I am so pleased. Tobago is actually a small space because so many people come on and I realize that, okay, but hi, I know this person or I worked with this person. And today is just one of those days. So I welcome to the set the Technical Advisor, Livestock Department of Agriculture, Mr. Keith George. And good morning to you and welcome to Brunch.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and you walk through the door and I realized that, oh my gosh, this is Mr. George from Agriculture. And I was even doing like the background story of when I worked there briefly. And I remember you because you were one of those persons that were always very, very pleasant, very kind, very helpful. And sometimes you go into a new environment and you're not sure what type of energy or personality you're going to meet. And I remember, you may not remember me, that's fine. But I remember you because you were always very kind. And that is what stood out about you. So I realized when you walked in that I actually knew who you were.
Well, thanks for the observation and thanks for the compliments.
You're most welcome. So the Lamb Initiative. Let's talk about that. I remember that we had the first installation of the Lamb Fest, which took place for October of 2023. And some of your colleagues were here and they gave wonderful reviews. And it's definitely something that's going to grow from strength to strength. So that part is a given. There's no ifs or buts about it. But so much more has been going on in the space. So let's go. Tell us about what's going on.
Well, before I go forward, I probably, it's just appropriate that I recognize the efforts of the Secretary of the Division of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development, Mrs. Natisha Charles Pantin. She is pretty much the brainchild of this initiative. And the administrator in our division, Mrs. Sherry-Ann Edwards-Louis. They both strongly support this initiative. And this morning is the first meeting of its kind, where we are throwing it out to the public, as it were.
Okay.
And we trust that the farming community embrace the project. And what exactly is the project?
Yes.
All right. The initiative is aimed at purchasing 1,000 lambs and 500 kids between the ages of 2 to 4 months. Purchased by the division through key stakeholder in that aspect is the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company, TADCO.
Right.
They are one of our stakeholders. Right. The objective is to purchase these lambs, to grow them out, and then to place some into our breeding flock, both the sheep and goats, and the other part of the population, some of which will go back to the farmers, and some of which, you speak of the Lamb Fest, will go into the marketing pool. But I think the background to all of that will probably be critical for your audience and for other stakeholders who will have an interest. My area is really livestock and specifically sheep development. Most of my career, even when you knew me in the division, most of my career focused around that. What is happening? Apart from that, Tobago, back in 1970 to 72, Tobago was identified as having the special comparative advantage for lamb production.
Oh, wow.
Right? And that saw the birth of the blending sheep multiplication research station, which is under the Division of Agriculture. That station served as a regional satellite station to produce lambs for the entire region. So there was the Trinidad and Tobago government support, and there was regional support.
Right.
And international support for the development of that station. The objective there was to produce the lambs, reach out to the farmers and the wider region, right? Blending fulfilled that mandate, because we're talking 1972 to now, just over 50 years, right? And of course, having fulfilled the mandate, there are challenges beyond, the mandate. What are the challenges now? The key challenge is a downward spiraling in the reproductive flux on the island. I see a downward spiraling in that the population of animals at Blending now probably is at its all-time low. Not just at Blending Hope Farm, because we're dealing with sheep. Blending is exclusively sheep. Hope Farm has goats. Kendall Farm School has goats. And we also have sheep at Runnymede Breeding Unit, Kendall Farm School, and Charlottesville Breeding Unit.
Okay.
All right. So those are the government stations that are involved in the small ruminant production on the island. All right. Now I speak of the downward spiral in the population. We are at the lowest ebb now in terms of the reproductive herd, and therefore this initiative aims directly at reversing that situation, getting the trend to go upwards again. All right, and the trend is projecting towards 800 breeding females, sheep, that is, at Blending at the end of the cycle.
Right.
Right now we're just down less than 200. All right, and at Kendall, Runnymede, and Charlottesville, in terms of the sheep, 300, and the goats 300 on those other units. All right, so that those units are charged by the government to do the reproduction and pass the lambs out to the farming community. So if their numbers are bad, then delivering that expectation will invariably fall short. Right? So our secretary, who is ever mindful of the situation, would have thought about and inquired, how could we reverse the trend? How could we become more efficient at delivering on the mandate? And that pretty much saw the birth of this project.
Yeah, and the initiative, it seems it's so timely, because there definitely was that trend that was spiraling, even to the general eye, even to those of us who aren't employed to
in
really
that sector.
And invested in looking at these statistics. It was so evident that we were just seeing less sheep. It just wasn't the number. It just wasn't that capacity that we were accustomed to in previous years. So the initiative, I would say, came about in such a timely fashion.
Right.
It's really needed.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think, following the trends, as I said, a lot of my engagement is in the small ruminant sector. Coming out or during the COVID period, there was a very steep spike in the demand for the small ruminants. We were seeing far more vehicles. Most of our output goes to Trinidad, and we were seeing far more vehicles, traders coming from Trinidad, trying to source animals in Tobago.
Right.
That period would have seen a big extraction in our reproductive herd, because then we had the restrictions with COVID. You had a bigger demand, so of course people are going to cash in where it's possible. But what was happening is that the southern borders in Trinidad were closed. There was greater monitoring on that side of Trinidad. And so we know that a lot of animals come through the southern border in Trinidad.
Oh, yes.
All right. And because that border was closed during the COVID time, the butchers had to find other options. And so more of them were coming to Tobago. And of course, we just couldn't fulfill the demand.
And facilitate.
What it meant is that a meaningful part, of course, we don't have all the statistics, a meaningful part of your reproductive herd was extracted during that period. And of course, we're just in the post-COVID era, so you're seeing where it's becoming increasingly evident of the need to strengthen the reproductive capacity.
Definitely. And I think too, we had a lot of selling, as you said, buying and the selling taking place, just because people were basically trying to make ends meet. COVID hit us really hard, and many of us had to go back to the drawing table, as they said. What am I doing? How can I sustain my family? How can I make this money? A lot of people lost their jobs. It was just a whole other vibe, as we say. And it lent that opening to where farmers were really selling
valuable. Right. Beyond that, there are a couple of challenges in this sector. We're treating one of fertility. And probably for your audience, it might be reasonable to explain that. Fertility has to do with the number of females that become pregnant when they're exposed to the males. Right. Generally, we'll breed in groups. So let's say you expose 10 females to a male and 5 become pregnant. You know, basically the exposure is between 30 and 45 days. If 5 become pregnant, then you're at 50% fertility.
Yes.
Right? Usually, you will expect 90 to 95. Fertility on the island at the moment is wavering between 60 and 65, 70. Right? That means that technically, fewer of your female animals are becoming pregnant when exposed to the male. Now, it is not necessarily a female problem.
Yes.
Because fertility is a combination of male and female issues, right? So we have to find out why the low fertility. A second overlay to that is the prolificacy. What is prolificacy? When the females become pregnant, they give birth. Generally, with sheep and goat, we'll expect 2 lambs or kids, as the case might be. Internationally, the average is 1.5. What we are seeing is a high incidence of 1s. So you're below the threshold. A third issue is mortality. Among the lambs, well, among all classes of animals, the lambs are born, but the lambs we're focusing on here particularly now, the lambs are born and a significant percentage die. When I did my work initially, within the first 30 days of birth, you had the highest mortalities. But when overall your mortality is up, then what it means is that you have fewer lambs going on the chain, the market chain. The replacement, because mothers and males and females will die, the mature ones, and you have to replace them. So overall, you have a fewer lambs to do that replacement, and that represents automatically a downward spiraling of your capacity.
There you go, and you explained it so well. We have so much to talk about because you know that you have to come back and sit with me.
Yeah, we have to rebound.
And really get into it. But before we wrap really quickly, our 2024 installation of the Lamb Fest, are there any surprises? Is there anything that we could look forward to? I mean, don't let everything out of the bag, but are there any surprises in store?
Okay, well, coming out from the initiative, right, with the 1,000 lambs and the 500 kids, some of those animals will go into the Lamb Fest.
Okay.
All
good.
right. I know the team initially that dealt with the Lamb Fest did struggle to get animals with the appropriate parameters to service the festival. Coming out from this initiative, that should change. Not should, that will change.
Okay.
Right? Because we're going to be working with the animals specifically. All right, to produce them for the respective markets. From the initiative, we're going to create employment because we need to bring in persons. Specifically, we do have the cadre of workers attached to the respective stations at the moment, but we will need to bring in additional hands to treat with this specific initiative. So there is going to be training, there is going to be employment, and research work, because a lot of information will be generated in going forward with this project. So we're going to be doing a lot of research work with it. The division also have a new unit, TARI, Tobago Agricultural Research Institute. I'm not sure if you heard about it as yet, but they are going to be featuring in this project a whole lot. So we're going to be doing the research and ultimately the publications, right? So farmers are going to be involved. Other stakeholders, other departments, the URP department will be partnering with us, particularly in the labor area, to supply the labor so that they're going to be eventually trained and certified through our TARI, the University of the West Indies. In fact, we're supposed to have a meeting later today with them, and this is going to be one of the initiatives that we're asking them to collaborate with, particularly on the research front. UTT, I think that meeting is in progress now. So that's my next meeting immediately after I'm finished with you. So that is collaboration, right? The Lamb Festival is going to benefit from it. Tobago is going to benefit from the initiative.
Definitely. And we want to thank you so much, Mr. Keith George, for being a part of Brunch, A Taste of Tobago. Of course, you have to come back because there's so much that we need to touch on and make the public aware. So much is going on in the agricultural space that we need to touch on. So we're going to definitely have you back for another interesting conversation. So thank you once again for being a part of Brunch today.
It was my pleasure, and thanks very much for the invitation.
You are so welcome. We're going to take a break, guys. We're going to be right back with more Brunch, A Taste of Tobago. But of course, our trivia question, I need to mention the species of turtle nests on our shores during this time of the year. The answer at the end of the show. We will be right back with more Brunch.